Hi, this is Erica Norton, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area, and she and her team are phenomenal at what they do. And today we are going to be talking about a fun topic. Well, sort of fun if it works out, fun for the kids. Um, and that is who pays for extracurricular activities. I want to welcome you to the show today. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So, extracurricular activities, I feel like it's kind of an afterthought when you have to deal with all of the rest of it during your divorce. Is that true?
I don't know about an afterthought, but it's always a little more of a dig, if you will. You haven't gotten screwed enough. Okay, let's just talk about this one last topic. And everyone's like, oh, aren't we done? So it's one of those things that it's sort of an afterthought. Maybe it's an intentional afterthought, but it's one of those things that, like I said, the other parties, I was like, didn't we settle everything? So really depends on which side you're on, and nobody likes to talk about it.
And obviously, the person that's paying the child support is like, well, you just use the money that I'm paying you to pay for the extras. Is that right?
That is always the answer.
So I would think that typically, if they're involved in an activity, that's something where they don't want to change the child's life. So they add that into the mix of the divorce agreement. Is that right?
Yeah, all too often, you hear the parties say, well, the children need to have these activities. They've always been engaged in the activities. But what people don't understand is, again, you're going from a two household income to a one household income. It makes it harder for that person to be able to do that. And now if one of the parties, the non-custodial parent, is not having the children all the time, great, but now he's paying child support. So now that's more money out of his pocket, and now you're asking him to pay additional expenses, and he has to find his own apartment. And so it starts adding up, it starts building up really fast. And so that's where everyone goes, well, wait a minute, I am paying you support. Why should I have to give you this extra money? And the simple fact of the matter is, it's discretionary. You don't have to. The problem is you set the tone at that first hearing, whether it be on paternity or on divorce or whatever the case may be. That first judgment is going to really control what, if any, obligation you have for extracurricular expenses moving forward.
So sometimes people get divorced when their children are younger and they're in those kiddie type activities. You've got the kids that are in ballet and you've got the kids that are in gymnastics and rock climbing. I don't know what they're doing, but they're probably not rock climbing young. But there's a lot. I mean, they're probably not into music lessons yet, but maybe as they mature, they want to play an instrument or they want to do any number of other activities. I know my child has grown out of gymnastics and now she wants to ride horses. It's expensive. And then there's camps too. I mean, those are activities that people, don't talk about when you're going through it. So, like, what happens when the needs change? Because everyone knows that as kids get more developed and they get older, the activities get way more expensive, and so do the presents.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a key factor. We were just talking the other day about kids that are in hockey. And depending on what, hockey is an expensive sport. It just is. Same as lacrosse, same as gymnastics, depending on whether or not we do competitions, same as dance if we get do competition. So again, those are probably the four biggest ones in terms of expense. And obviously, again, as they do more, some parents say, okay, well, you have a spring, fall, winter, and summer event, and you're doing one activity every single quarter. So again, those are adding up. So we really got to pick and choose which ones are beneficial for you and which is beneficial for the family because again, we might not have the resources to do that.
I mean, and that's so true. And I think that so often kids just end up as they get older, just not getting to do those extracurricular activities that have an expense. I mean, it is something that maybe falls by the wayside.
It you would think that. I think it's about 50-50. There's some that grow out of it. There's some that change their mind and realize, hey, look, I can only play in one quarter a year versus every single quarter. And then there's the other ones that really are losing out. But then you have the opposite extreme where mom or dad will pay for it and they will literally bankrupt themselves to pay for these things. It's important to the kids. We're not disrupting the kids' lives. Okay, but at what expense? And so that becomes the risk when you have all these high expensive activities that the children are like, well, wait a minute, I want to do this. Well, that's great, but I have to be able to afford it. So do we put food on your plate or do we do this? And you'll have the parents that will get a second and third job to do that. But again, at what expense? Because now you're not having the quality time with the children.
Oh, I mean, it's so true. You are going through a divorce and you're giving up so much of your old life. And there are just certain things that you just want to hold on to. And I totally get that, but you can see where people get more and more behind in the bills. And it's hard to explain to the kid that, listen, things are a little different now. We gotta scale back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the big thing is if you are going to contribute, whether you're the custodial or non custodial parent, put a cap on it. Again, when you have these large ticket items, great. I have to pay for, the lacrosse gear and their goalie and or the hockey player and their goalie and of course they're growing every single 5 seconds. So again, you're just paying more and more and more because they're outgrowing the stuff or it gets battered really fast because they're in tournaments year round. So again, make sure you have that option. Is there a cap on it? Is that something that your family can afford to do? Because it's much easier to say, okay, I can afford an extra $30 a week, and I know that, so I'm going to budget it, and then figure out what that is for per year, so that you're doing it in maybe a vacation club fund, or those things that they have at the bank where that money's going into account every week, so that you have the funds when it's available and when you need it.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and that's probably something that everyone should do so that your kids can still do what they need to do within reason and without having to, skip bills or or if not be able to put food on the table and that sort of thing. What do you typically do about, let's say there's like after school care and there's summer camps and that sort of thing, and it's kind of on the cusp of childcare, but also something fun for the kids to do because as they get older, there are camps for everything. You can go to science camp, there's more elaborate ones, there's sleepover camps as they get older, which are great experiences for them. I mean, what happens when later in life they qualify for these other types of camps?
That's a perfect question. It's actually one of the things I was just going to talk to you about. But it really is one of those things that is it a daycare cost? And should we be factoring that into daycare? Is camp an extracurricular activity? Might not be one. So again, you really need to make sure that you're defining what those extracurricular activities are. One of the big things that I come across is, and we haven't talked about it, but is driver's ed an extracurricular? Oh, wait a minute. What about, the school vacation trips that they're going to Europe? What about the yearbooks or the senior photos or the prom? We could go crazy, right? Is it extracurricular? Not really. But can you define it as extracurricular? Yes. So I think it really boils down to, again, having good language and an agreement. I think it really depends on the parents, and the parents are going to typically look at, well, what have the children done in the past? What does my work schedule look like? What does the parenting schedule look like that I can maybe do this only on my days and not on my ex's days? So it's really a conversation that we have to have. And obviously, if the children are infants when we do this, we may be looking at a change as time goes on. But we really have to evaluate what is best for that child and what is best for the family as a whole. Because if both of you are working, neither one of you can take care of them, and we're either going to pay for a daycare or babysitter, then camp might be the best option, because at least then they're getting activities and they're getting knowledge of a skill or something that they enjoy.
I mean, and that's always better, especially if it's summer vacation and they're just running wild, having a good time. Do you have any advice about how and when to set up the language surrounding extracurricular activities?
I think, again, the language is going to always start with that first judgment, whatever that is. So as we're approaching that first judgment, let's have that conversation. Each party's going to want to have that conversation. Again, my first question is going to be, okay, so what does Sally do today? And then my next question is, well, do you know if Sally's going to be interested in other activities? And sometimes it's, yeah, she really always talked about that acting class, but I've never been able to afford it. Or, hey, I know that she said she was interested, but I think it's just a fad because her friends are doing it. So again, we're going to have that conversation, because I want to be able to evaluate it. Is this a kid who only is interested in soccer? Great. Cheapest sport there is, right? Next to basketball, those are the cheapest ones. We're good. But then, you have the other activities. So again, I'm going to gauge what their involvement is. If it is musical, again, is it something that we're going to have to continue with lessons on? Or is it something that we can just do through the school in a free program? So again, we're going to look at that stuff. Is it something that they're really going to excel? And this might be their lifelong career to be a concert pianist, right? So we need to make sure that they have the right information, they have the right tutors, right classes, all of that stuff. So it really depends on what their interest is. We're going to have an in-depth conversation. We're going to somewhat project what that child might evolve into in terms of activities, and then we're going to come up with a game plan. The reality is that game plan may very well change as the child gets older and as their child's desires change.
And then what if things do change, but one of the parents does not want to share in what is clearly an extracurricular activity? Is it back to court? Do you decide, well, it's really not worth it because that thing costs X amount and my lawyer is going to cost 5 times as much? Is that typically how you make that decision?
It's definitely a factor. It's one of those definite factors that we have to look at. Again, most of the language is going to say neither parent can unreasonably withhold consent. Now, the other parent goes, look, I can't afford it. If you want to do it, you can do it. You can do it on your time. I'm not going to go during my parenting time. I disagree with this activity outright. What is the basis? So we're all going to start with, what is the basis for the other person objecting? Because I'm assuming that language is going to be in there. If it's not in there, then you're definitely going to have to go in and look for a modification. We'll talk about the cost in a second. But we need to know what that's going to look like as to, again, what is their reason for rejecting it? Then it boils down to, okay, what is the cost effectiveness? Are you going to go in only for that? If you are, you're going in pro se, because it's not going to be cost effective. Unless your child is in dance and they're in competitions and they're going pro with it, chances are nobody's going to care. It's not going to be cost effective. But there is that one or two outliers that actually will have that issue. But the reality is nobody else is going to do that. What you're most likely is going to do is, well, the parenting schedule has changed, and or mom or dad's income has changed. So let's evaluate the child support, hopefully get an increase, and maybe that increase in child support will pay for that extracurricular activity. So again, there's a lot of things that we can talk about and kind of think about it and figure out what is best, because maybe the other thing is, well, then fine, let me claim them on the taxes, and then that will cover your portion of the extracurricular activities that I'm not obligating you to do. So there are so many variables that we can come up with that will help resolve this problem. But if it's just an extracurricular and there's nothing else, chances are you're going to either eat it or you're going to figure out a way to do it financially.
I know personally, I never thought of like, oh, school pictures, I would buy them for everyone. I, hand it out to the ex mother and mother-in-law and the sister-in-law and all that. And, I bought a yearbook this year, bought a sweatshirt with her graduation. I mean, you just can't keep track and keep asking for the little things that are just something you want to do. And certainly, I don't think vacations are something that you can ask your your ex for. If you bring your child on vacation, I mean, even if there is a summer camp, I drove my kid down to SeaWorld. She did a day camp at SeaWorld in Florida, which was amazing. But I did not expect to get anything for that. So it just got to be reasonable, I suppose.
Absolutely. And usually it's the school vacation trip to Europe or something. Okay, great, but now I have to come up with $2,000. Like, that's a lot of money for a lot of people, especially when they, oh, by the way, I need that in 3 weeks, because that's usually how that scenario goes. But yeah, I mean, you really have to be realistic. There are things that you're going, are you just going to nickel and dime? And again, you don't have to buy pictures for your ex, and you can say, hey, look, here's the website, here's the information. It's available, right? You could be that nice person, and you could go out and buy them for them and hand them out. That's your choice. But it's really going back to, are you nickel and diming? And at some point, it becomes nickel and diming, especially again, maybe you have a parent that really only pays $50 a week in child support. Well, maybe that person either one really can't afford to keep going back into court, but was willing to do the extras voluntarily. Amazing enough, it does happen. But then you have the other extreme where the person's making $400 or $500 a week in child support, and they're going, "But I want more." And so again, that really has a sour tone with people based on how much money they're getting and how much money they're supposed to be getting in child support, and whether or not you're above or below guidelines. So again, what does that look like? And what does your parenting time look like? Again, if you're spending more time but nobody's taking you back into court, that's going to have an impact one way or another.
And that's great advice. I think that really one of the common themes in these interviews that we do is just really pick your battles.
Couldn't say it any better myself. It's one of those things that I just keep telling everyone over and over again, like, you could pay me to do this, but it's going to cost you more money. Just have that conversation. Well, I can't talk to them. Okay, but that's a really expensive thing to learn, how to talk to your ex. And even if talking to your ex means I'm going to do it by email or text, it doesn't have to be in person, but just have that conversation.
I think that's great advice. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go on this particular topic? Because summer is coming, and this advice is really good for people that are looking at those summer activities.
I think it's really helpful for a party to think about what activities you're going to think about. Is it going to be that you're going to nitpick these things? And if you are, great, nitpick them in the beginning. Because again, the court isn't going to tell you that any yearbook or driver's ed is extracurricular. It's something that's negotiated. So can you negotiate it? Yes. But if you don't negotiate it, the court's going to laugh at you. The court's going to most likely laugh at you regarding camps, unless, of course, you've done camps for the first 15 years you've been married, and now we're in the last 3 years. Then the court's going to go, well, wait a minute, you should have expected that to come up. So again, we're going to look at the history, and we're going to look at, well, did you negotiate it? Because you didn't negotiate it, it doesn't say it, and all my agreements will say, the Sally is currently enrolled in blah, 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 blah. And, we just did one the other day, and it listed tournaments as well. So again, if you have something that is a tournament or a competition, we want to write those words in because that sets the tone.
Well, this is wonderful advice. Really appreciate your coming on and talking about this topic because I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's definitely an issue for divorced folks and separated folks, couples that didn't get married, like all of that. And it's good to know how to handle it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We will look forward to seeing you again next week.